Action.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Our dear teachers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So sometime a few weeks back now, and I think it has been quite a few weeks, we had started an important discussion about the problem of evil, because that is one of the questions that you will be facing in class. I said it was important for us to be able to develop a quick response to it as well, because when you are in class, you will only have sometimes 5 to 10 minutes to be able to respond to it. And the question was, why is there suffering in the world around us? And we say the suffering can be of two types. There is what is called moral suffering, the suffering that human beings inflict upon each other, and the suffering that is also known as natural suffering or natural evil, the evil that comes about from having earthquakes, from having genetic mutations, from having, fires and other storms and hurricanes as well. Okay? And the one thing that we pointed out in this whole discussion is that it not only goes to question the justice or the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but at some point, especially in this day and age, for a lot of our youths and for a lot of our people, it also goes on to question the very existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because a person will ask, is God not aware of what's happening? You'll say, yes, he is aware. He'll ask, is it not capable of doing something about it? You say, yes, he is capable. Does he not care enough? You'll say, no, he cares enough. Then the question will be, then why doesn't he do something about it? Is it that he doesn't exist? Now, one of the things that we pointed out also last week or a few weeks ago was the story of Khidr and Prophet Musa. And the lesson that we took away from that is, number one, there is always a purpose and a wisdom behind the suffering in the world that we see around us. But that number two, when that suffering is happening, we may not necessarily understand the wisdom behind it. That is a part of the test of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. During those moments, we will have to put our test in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that thirdly, we are capable as human beings to understand the wisdom behind it, why it had to happen. Just as Musa alayhi salam later could understand, we too one day will understand or are capable of generally understanding, or on the day of judgment we will understand it. And I say to you that it's always best to make your point by using an example. And just to quickly share one of the examples with you, one of the examples that I used in my class was that of Helen Keller. How many of you have heard of Helen Keller? Yeah. What was special about her?
She was deaf and blind.
She was deaf and blind, right? So when a person is deaf, they communicate to you by looking at you and by using sign language. When a person is blind, they communicate with you by listening to you and by speaking to you. She was deaf and blind as well. She didn't allow that to stop her from progressing in life. She became an activist. She brought about changes within US law, went all the way to Congress. And she's got a beautiful quote as well. In this quote she says, "Character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, ambition inspired, and success achieved." Now you may be wondering, how did she communicate all of this to us? And I'll leave that up to you to go and find out. Okay? But I want to put a different dimension to it today, okay? And to give you different examples using this dimension today. Scholars like Shaykh Murtaza, they point out in that book, Divine Justice, that God created the earth the best way it can ever be created. There is no better way of creating the earth than the way it is right now, okay? What does that mean? That means that when God created the elements or the processes that you see in the earth, overall, their goodness and their benefit overall is much greater than the suffering or the hardship created by them. Now let me give you some examples. For example, think of fire. Okay? We get so much benefit from fire. Fire, we can cook our food. I know we think about cooking food as not something that important. It's very important. When we're able to cook our food, we're able to take out a lot more calories from the same food than someone who's not able to cook the food. Not only that, but we only have to eat a little bit to be able to get the same energy from the food. Not only that, our stomach sizes don't have to be that big. Like the Neanderthals, the Homo neanderthalis, their stomach sizes were much bigger than ours. Number 4, our brain, which uses up most of the calories and most of the energy that we get from the food, it can get those calories and it can develop and grow. And therefore you find that for the Homo sapiens who knew how to control fire and knew how to cook food, they were able to develop their brains much better than the Homo neanderthalis, for example. With fire, we're able to see at night, and we're able to continue human activity at night. With fire, we're able to create warmth. Not just create warmth, but to take warmth with us wherever we go. And therefore you find that Homo sapiens were able to travel to areas where others were not able to travel to because those areas were too cold. Look at all of these benefits, but at the same time, yes, fires do cause people to die sometimes and do cause people to get injured. Earthquakes, for example, all right? Look at the benefits of having earthquakes. When the tectonic plates, they move, especially at the bottom of the ocean, right? They create earthquakes. At the same time, they bring about the things which are underneath the earth onto the surface of the ocean. And that allows plant life and fish and other sea creatures to thrive at the floor of the ocean. And that allows it to consume the carbon monoxide and the carbon dioxide that's there in the atmosphere and produce oxygen for us. Today, most of the oxygen that we breathe is actually created from the plant life that is at the floor of the ocean. But yet, at the same time, when earthquakes do happen, sometimes people die. But I was calculating, in 2013, I was looking at this last week, in 2013, how many people died owing to an earthquake in the whole year? Any guesses? Hundreds, correct? Around? It's around 1,500 people to a maximum 2,000 people. I'm not trying to trivialize their death. When somebody dies in your family, it's very important. It's not only people who died, but people who lost their houses, who lost their families, people who were injured as well. That all is there. But think about it. The earthquake allows 7 billion people to survive and thrive and have oxygen. But sometimes the earthquakes also kill, a few people as well. Genetic mutations. Genetic diseases are caused by genetic mutations. A cell, when it replicates itself, never replicates itself in the same way. It mutates. And when it mutates, you have genetic diseases sometimes. However, at the same time, genetic mutation, which is random, has also allowed so many species, allows for natural selection, allows for evolution to occur, and also allows human beings to be able to adapt to changing surroundings and to be able to survive in changing surroundings as well. Therefore, our scholars point out that whenever God creates a process or an element, the overall greatness of that process and element is much greater than the suffering and hardship that comes about from it. But unfortunately, we focus on the suffering and hardship and we don't look at the benefits. Think about it. As human beings, we make cars. We make millions of cars in the year. And we know that cars will create accidents. And because of accidents, people will die. People will get injured. People will lose their lives. But at the same time, do we stop making cars? We don't. Why? Because the overall benefit far outweighs than the hardship and the suffering that it may cause. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.